When we talk about the most incredible stories in the Bible, what comes to mind? Miracles, epic battles, divine interventions? Samson's story is all of that and more. Get ready to discover how an ordinary man, through God's power, performed feats so impressive that they are still remembered today as examples of strength, courage, and determination. And what's even more surprising, the end of his life is one of the most impactful parts of this journey, with a twist you won't believe. Today, we're going to reveal 6 moments when Samson demonstrated his extraordinary strength, moments that will leave you speechless and maybe even give you chills. Do you know where Samson's strength came from? How was he able to perform such feats? Stay with us until the end because the final story is simply unbelievable. 1. The encounter with the lion, a test of strength and courage. The first event that highlights Samson's supernatural strength occurs in a situation of extreme danger. Imagine yourself on the road, walking peacefully, when suddenly a young and fierce lion appears before you. This was a scenario Samson faced on his way to Timnah, a city of the Philistines. While most people would have fled in despair, Samson acted with a confidence that can only be explained by his faith in God. Without hesitation, he grabbed the lion with his own hands and tore it apart as if it were a mere sheet of paper. This feat leads us to reflect on the true source of Samson's strength. In Judges 14, verse 6, it says that the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson, indicating that his strength was not just physical, but a direct manifestation of divine power. God was preparing Samson for the greater mission of liberating the people of Israel from the Philistines, and this encounter with the lion served as an initial test of his abilities and faith. The act of tearing the lion apart symbolizes victory over obstacles that would seem insurmountable to anyone else. But why a lion? The lion, a symbol of power and dominance, is also a spiritual symbol of the challenges Samson would face on his journey. This first test was a lesson in how to trust God in the face of seemingly insurmountable dangers. Later, when recounting this incident, we realize that it wasn't just a test of strength, but a demonstration of how Samson was destined to fulfill his divine mission, facing forces far greater than a mere wild animal. 2. The riddle of the honey, intelligence or irony. After defeating the lion, Samson returns to the site and finds something unusual: a swarm of bees making honey inside the carcass of the dead animal. For Samson, this was more than just a curiosity. He collected the honey and shared it with his parents without revealing its origin. But the incident became the basis for a riddle he posed during his wedding to a Philistine woman. The riddle: out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet, puzzled everyone, becoming an impossible challenge for the wedding guests. The riddle proposed by Samson reveals his intelligence and also a certain irony. The fact that he used such a strange personal event as the basis for a riddle shows that he was not just a man of brute strength, but also of wit. However, what began as a game quickly turned into betrayal. The groomsman, unable to solve the riddle, pressured his wife, who, under coercion, revealed the answer. This enraged Samson, who, in revenge, killed 30 men and took their clothes to pay the bet he had made. This episode reveals much more than just a display of strength and cunning. It foreshadows Samson's tragic fate, a man whose physical power was as great as his emotional vulnerability. His wife's betrayal is a recurring theme in his life, culminating later in the betrayal by Delilah. Here, the honey inside the lion's carcass can be seen as a symbol of how Samson often found sweetness and victory amidst pain and violence, but also how his victories always came with deep personal losses. 3. The fox's revenge, a fiery retribution. When we think of revenge, Samson's act with the foxes is, without a doubt, one of the most ingenious and devastating reactions in the Bible. After discovering that his wife had been given to another man, Samson felt betrayed and decided to take revenge on the Philistines in a way that still impresses us today for its creativity and brutality. He captured 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, fastened lit torches between them, and released them into the Philistine fields. The result was widespread chaos, with the wheat fields, vineyards, and olive groves destroyed by fire. This act of revenge is more than just a personal retaliation. It symbolizes Samson's destructive power when provoked. The foxes, animals known for their cunning and agility, were chosen by Samson as a tool of chaos, perhaps reflecting his own nature, untamable and unpredictable. The use of fire to destroy the crops also carries symbolic meaning, representing how Samson's anger, once ignited, was difficult to control. This event highlights Samson's ability to cause large-scale devastation, even with limited resources. However, this act also leads us to reflect on the consequences of uncontrolled vengeance and anger. Although Samson managed to destroy the Philistine fields, he was also fueling a cycle of violence that would eventually lead to his own capture and humiliation. The revenge with the foxes reminds us that, while divine justice was present in Samson's mission, his propensity for violence and anger also contributed to his tragic downfall. This moment is a powerful representation of Samson's internal struggle between fulfilling his divine mission and dealing with his human emotions. 4. 1,000 men and a jawbone. God's power manifested. Perhaps one of Samson's most well-known feats is his incredible victory over 1,000 Philistines, armed only with the jawbone of a donkey. The event begins dramatically. The people of Judah, fearful of Philistine retaliation, capture Samson and hand him over to his enemies. However, as the Philistines approach to attack him, the Spirit of the Lord once again fills him with power. The ropes binding him break like burned flax, and Samson, finding only a fresh donkey's jawbone, uses it to kill 1,000 men. This event is not just a display of physical strength, but also of strategic skill and trust in God. The donkey's jawbone, an unlikely and insignificant weapon, becomes in Samson's hands a tool of mass destruction. This reminds us of how God can use the humblest instruments to achieve great things. Samson's victory over 1,000 men with a simple jawbone also reflects the spiritual nature of his strength. He was not merely fighting a physical battle, but fulfilling a divine purpose of liberating Israel from the Philistines. This scene also highlights the contrast between human power and God's power. While the Philistines trusted in their numerical superiority, Samson trusted only in his faith and the power God had given him. This miraculous victory makes us reflect on the importance of trusting God in the face of seemingly impossible challenges. The donkey's jawbone becomes a symbol of what, to the world, seems weak, but in the hands of someone with faith, can become a tool of liberation and victory. 5. The gates of Gaza, a demonstration of defiance. After spending the night with a prostitute in Gaza, Samson once again finds himself in a dangerous situation. The Philistines, aware that he is in the city, plan to capture him at dawn. However, instead of fleeing or hiding, Samson decides to confront the challenge in a dramatic way. He rises in the middle of the night, goes to the city gates, which were heavy and heavily guarded, and, with his extraordinary strength, tears them from the ground along with the doorposts and locks. He then carries the gates over 60 kilometers to the top of a mountain. This act of brute strength is more than just a show of power. By carrying the gates of Gaza, Samson was sending a clear message to his enemies. He was indomitable, and no human effort could contain him. The fact that he carried the gates such a long distance also symbolizes his ability to bear burdens that most people couldn't even imagine. Additionally, this event demonstrates how, even when Samson placed himself in compromising situations, like being with a prostitute, he was still used by God to fulfill his purposes. The removal of the city gates of Gaza has deep significance. In ancient times, a city's gates represented its security and strength. By tearing them down and carrying them away, Samson was essentially saying that no place was safe from God's power. This scene makes us think about the times when we are called to demonstrate our strength in the midst of adversity, and how God empowers us to do things that seem impossible to the world. 6. The final act in the Temple of Dagon, redemption and sacrifice. The final moment of Samson's life is one of the most dramatic and powerful events in the entire Bible. After being betrayed by Delilah, Samson loses his strength when his hair is cut, the symbol of his covenant with God. Captured by the Philistines, he is taken to the temple of Dagon, their god, where he is publicly humiliated. Blind and weak, he becomes a tragic figure. But it is at this lowest point that Samson finds his true redemption. Even in his physical weakness, his faith in God never wavered. He prayed to God, asking for strength one last time, not for himself, but to avenge the Philistines who had blinded him. What follows is an extraordinary display of power and sacrifice. Placed between the central pillars of the temple, where thousands of Philistines had gathered to celebrate his capture, Samson makes one last plea to God. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more. With this sincere prayer, he pushes the pillars with all his might, bringing the temple down, killing all those present, including himself. In this final act, Samson killed more enemies in his death than during his entire life. His death was not just an act of vengeance, but also one of liberation for the people of Israel. This final scene reveals a profound truth about Samson. His strength was always in his connection to God, not just in his muscles. Even after failing to perfectly fulfill his mission, he found redemption in the final moments of his life, showing that God can use us even in our weaknesses. Samson's sacrifice, in bringing the temple down on himself and his enemies, symbolizes the idea that true power lies not only in physical strength, but in unwavering faith in God and fulfilling divine purpose, regardless of the circumstances. Samson's true strength. Samson's life is a fascinating example of how physical and spiritual strength can combine to accomplish extraordinary feats. Throughout his life, Samson repeatedly demonstrated that his strength came directly from his relationship with God, being used as a divine instrument to free Israel from the Philistines. However, his story also teaches us about human vulnerabilities. Samson was a man of great strength, but also of great weaknesses, particularly concerning his emotional life and relationships. More than just a tale of heroic deeds, Samson's story is a profound lesson in redemption, purpose, and persistence. Even when everything seemed lost, when Samson was blind and humiliated, he never lost his faith in God. This teaches us that even in our darkest moments, we can find strength and redemption through our faith and purpose. Samson's life is a reminder that God does not choose the most perfect people to carry out his plans, but those who, despite their flaws, are willing to trust in him. Finally, Samson's true strength was not just in his ability to defeat lions or carry gates, but in his unwavering faith in God's power to accomplish the impossible. If this story inspired you, leave a comment and share which of Samson's feats impressed you the most. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content like this.